Meteorologist Sarah Gannon joins us live from the weather pad tonight. Sarah, what are you tracking for the rest of this evening?
Well, hey there, Olivia. Keeping an eye on our next weather maker. We are tracking some much needed rainfall for the region. However, some heavy rainfall may be in play as well. So that is a concern for the area tonight. Recapping though, today we saw high temperatures into those lower to mid 80s. A nice, comfortable day. A little less humidity out there for our Thursday. Looking ahead though, as we track in with satellite and radar, most of us pretty dry, quiet, some cloud cover continuing to build in. However, we are monitoring that threat for heavy rainfall. As we look ahead to our first alert day on Friday, we are looking at Friday morning into the afternoon with some heavy rainfall, and some spots could be looking at 2 to 3 plus inches of rainfall across southern Minnesota and northern Iowa. So we are looking ahead to the possible threat of some localized flash flooding. Things to keep in mind heading into tomorrow. It'll be a wet, soggy day. Have that rain gear handy, but especially if you live in some lower lying areas or flood prone areas, make sure that you have ways to receive alerts and warnings, but monitoring things throughout the day. And of course, that friendly reminder, turn around, don't drown if you come across flooded roadways. You will certainly be putting the umbrellas to great use here for your Friday. We have a first alert day ahead as we track the threat for some heavy rainfall and maybe even some localized flooding. Pretty much a bit of a wet day for us in southern Minnesota, northern Iowa. The good news is showers and thunderstorms gradually wrapping up as we move further into the evening hours, but a pretty wet day is ahead for the region. We'll talk more about how that weekend forecast is shaping up. That's ahead in your first alert weather. We have a first alert day in place for the area tomorrow for your Friday as we track that threat for heavy rainfall. Big main timing for that rain will be moving through Friday morning and the afternoon, and conditions gradually beginning to dry up as we move throughout the evening hours. The big focus is going to be on that threat for heavy rainfall, with some areas maybe even looking at upwards of 2 to 3 plus inches of rain when all is said and done. And one of the big threats, one of the big concerns that we'll have for the area throughout tomorrow is going to be the risk for some localized flash flooding. We do have a flood watch for some of our local counties, mainly along I-35 and to the west, including Mankato, St. James, Fairmont, and up towards the Redwood Falls area. Now, the National Weather Service did mention in their discussion with this watch that some areas within the watch could potentially be looking at local isolated pockets upwards of 4 to 6 inches of rainfall during this event. So that watch stays in place through about the midday on Friday. Current timing for rainfall looking to arrive gradually after midnight, probably closer to about 4 a.m. for the Rochester area, closer to about 2 a.m. for Mankato. But looking to see more scattered to widespread activity as we continue through into that morning commute. So morning and into the afternoon, looking at that widespread rainfall for the area. As we move throughout the afternoon, gradually looking at that rainfall tapering off, and I think most of this rain should be out of here by about midnight tomorrow. But as we look ahead tonight, the excessive rainfall outlook does have areas now as far east as portions of Highway 52, including the I-35 region, and to the west under that level 2 out of a level 4 risk for excessive rainfall. Now that's for tonight. Tomorrow, we see that threat shifting east, including a vast majority of southern Minnesota, northern Iowa, even back into Wisconsin, portions of Illinois, and even jutting towards central and southern Iowa. So that level 2 threat continues to remain over the area. And the last system that we had that level 2 risk when we saw a localized flash flooding in some parts of southern Minnesota and northern Iowa. So looking at rainfall amounts, I do think areas along the riverside, including Olmsted County, could be looking at about 3/4 of an inch, maybe upwards of 1.25 inches on the higher side for totals here through tomorrow. Notice all the counties highlighted here in pink throughout southern Minnesota and northern Iowa. This is where we could be looking at some of those higher totals, potentially upwards of 2 inches. However, there is a swath of counties here where we could possibly be looking at maybe 2 to 3 plus inches of rainfall. And again, this area between Mankato, Albert Lee, Owatonna, that could be looking at some localized amounts even higher than that 3-inch mark. So use some extra caution throughout to tomorrow with that heavy rainfall. Things drying up for the weekend here as we look at that 7-day forecast for Mankato. And a reminder, first alert day ahead for tomorrow due to that heavy rainfall threat. We are gearing up, though, for some quieter conditions this weekend and into next week.
Tomorrow, make sure everybody has a way to be alerted to changing conditions. As we saw earlier in July, things can change very quickly.
Yes, absolutely, especially with that flash flooding.
All right, thank you, Sarah.
We continue to track out our upcoming rain for our Friday, a first alert day ahead as we monitor the threat for heavy rainfall and even some localized flash flooding. Latest look at radar here as we enter into the 9:30 half hour, seeing some showers and thunderstorms building off to our west. We'll look to see more of that rainfall moving east as we move into the overnight hours. Latest update on timing and totals we could be looking at is in your first alert forecast coming up. Localized flash flooding with a first alert day ahead for Friday, bringing some much needed rainfall, but hopefully not too much. We'll talk more about those first alert details coming up.
Thank you. Meteorologist Sarah Gannon joins us live from the weather patio. Sarah, what are you tracking for our Friday?
Well, hey there, Olivia. Things looking pretty quiet at this point in time here as I'm out on the weather patio this evening. It's a humid evening. Quiet, though. We are keeping an eye on radar through tonight as we track our next weather maker. Some much needed rain on the horizon as we look forward here. We're expecting overnight and especially throughout our Friday some wet conditions. However, there are concerns, which is why we have a first alert day for our Friday. We are looking at the best timing for rainfall to be moving through, impacting the entire area throughout Friday morning and the afternoon. So pretty soggy day. Heavy rainfall will be a concern, which has prompted part of the reason why we are looking at a first alert day for tomorrow. But we could be looking at some rainfall amounts upwards of 2 to 3 plus inches across portions of southern Minnesota and northern Iowa. And one of the main threats, in addition to the heavy rainfall, we are gearing up for the possibility of some localized flash flooding possible. And the two reasons combined, it was a big was a big reasoning for needing that first alert day for tomorrow. So monitoring things pretty closely heading into your Friday. Keep the rain gear handy, but we'll talk more about what's in store for tomorrow. That's in your first alert weather coming up. A first alert day is ahead for southern Minnesota and northern Iowa tomorrow as we track the threat for heavy rainfall and maybe even some localized flash flooding. Keep the rain gear handy throughout tomorrow and make sure you have multiple ways to receive alerts and warnings, especially if you live in flood-prone areas or low-lying areas. We continue to monitor a soggy Friday for the region. We'll take the rain. We just don't need the consequences of heavy rainfall through the area. Those latest first alert forecast details are next. We have a first alert day ahead for the area tomorrow as we track the threat for some shower and thunderstorm activity, but heavy rainfall will be a big drive for this first alert day. Timing wise for rainfall tomorrow, we're looking at the morning into the afternoon and things gradually becoming drier as we move into the evening hours. But heavy rainfall will be a big concern for tomorrow with the possibility of 2 to 3 plus inches of rainfall by the end of tomorrow. And one of the main hazards, one of the main threats for tomorrow is going to be the risk for some localized flash flooding. As we look at our current alerts, there is a flood watch for some of our counties along I-35 and to the west, including Mankato, St. James, Fairmont, back towards Redwood Falls, Owatonna, Albert Lee area. This flood watch will be in effect through about midday tomorrow. I would like to note that the National Weather Service, with their discussion on this flood watch, did mention the possibility of this area seeing potentially upwards of 4 to 6 inches of rainfall tomorrow. So looking at that rainfall timing, we'll really start to see that rainfall arriving after midnight tonight towards about 3 a.m. But really seeing the bulk of that heavy rainfall from about 6 a.m. through about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So through the midday, really looking at some soggy conditions. We'll see rain showers and thunderstorms kind of really wrapping up as we move throughout the afternoon and evening hours. But looking at that excessive rainfall outlook for tonight, this has moved a little bit further east towards Highway 52, but essentially I-35 into western Minnesota, back towards South Dakota even. But then as we look ahead to tomorrow, that threat shifting further east, so the entire KTDC viewing area under that level 2 out of a level 4 risk. And this is where we have that concern for heavy rainfall to best happen throughout tonight and into tomorrow. And if you recall, last heavy rainfall event, flooding event, we had that level 2 risk for excessive rainfall. So let's talk about those rainfall totals. Notice here in the purple, this is where we could be looking at those highest totals, potentially upwards of 2 plus inches of rainfall, some localized pockets upwards of 3 plus inches. So some heavy rainfall on the way. Make sure you have multiple ways to receive alerts and warnings for any flood related concerns. Things drying up nicely heading into this weekend. Hopefully we don't have too much cleanup to do. But a reminder, we have that first alert day in place tomorrow, gearing up though for some wet conditions throughout the day.
But I mean, once we get past Friday, as long as
one last look at that 10-day forecast as we track a first alert day for Friday. The threat for heavy rainfall and some localized flash flooding is possible tomorrow. Make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts and warnings on those flood-related concerns, especially if you're in flood-prone or low-lying areas. And we saw how those last events played out. Hopefully we don't see a repeat tomorrow, but the situation stacking up very similar.
I know, I hope so. Lots of things to keep an eye on. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow night at 9.
A first alert day is ahead for our Friday as we track the threat for some heavy rainfall. Some much needed rain on the horizon. However, we don't need a lot of it all in one time. We are looking at a pretty soggy day for tomorrow, and we are timing things out with the morning hours into the afternoon. Our best opportunity to see rainfall, especially that heavy rainfall. And we could even be looking at some totals ending up around 2 to 3+ inches in some isolated locations. And like I said, there is a threat for some localized flash flooding on top of that heavy rainfall. So we saw what happened earlier this month in some locations. A very similar setup for some spots. Now, mentioned here, we do have a flood watch in place for a couple of our counties along the I-35 area, Steele and Freeborn counties. You can see areas further off to the west towards Mankato also included in that watch, and that stays in effect through tomorrow. But a little look ahead to some timing, essentially an all-day type of event. So keep the rain gear handy. You'll be using it throughout the day, hoping to see those showers and thunderstorms coming to an end and gradually wrapping up towards those evening hours tomorrow. So monitoring things very closely and really hoping we don't see that type of event like we did earlier this month with that flash flooding.
Yeah, pretty impressive visual image behind you there. A lot of rain coming all at once potentially. So we'll keep an eye on it, Sarah. Thank you so much.
We continue to keep a close eye on Friday. We've been tracking the rainfall. We need it, but we don't need heavy rainfall and a lot at one time. There is some concern for some localized flash flooding possible tomorrow, as some areas could potentially be looking at 2+ inches of rainfall by the end of Friday. Keep the rain gear and the umbrellas handy throughout tomorrow as we track a pretty soggy Friday for the area. Looking ahead, though, to a brighter, quieter weekend. We'll talk about all those first alert details and what's in store for your first alert day tomorrow and that weekend forecast ahead.
Here's your first alert weather with meteorologist Sarah Gannon.
First alert day in place for Friday as we track some much needed rainfall. However, heavy rainfall and the potential for some localized flash flooding concerns and prompting tomorrow's first alert day. In terms of timing for what's in store, we are gearing up for some rainfall throughout a majority of the day, really throughout the heaviest of that rainfall during the morning and into the afternoon. Heavy rainfall, a concern through tomorrow with some totals potentially upwards of 2 to 3+ inches when all is said and done by the end of Friday. In terms of those threats, localized flash flooding will be a big concern for the area tomorrow and one that we're monitoring very closely for tomorrow. There is a flood watch for a couple of our counties along the I-35 region there for Steele and Freeborn County. Still continues, though, off to the west and to the northwest through Mankato up towards Redwood Falls. That flood watch remaining in place through tomorrow midday. And National Weather Service did mention the possibility of maybe 4 to 6 inches of snow of rainfall possible in that direction. Let's put things into motion here with future track as we move towards about 2 a.m. tomorrow morning. We'll start to see some of those rain showers making their way into the region, becoming a little bit more isolated to scattered as we make our way towards that morning commute tomorrow about 6 a.m. there. You can see those pockets of heavy rainfall that persists throughout the morning there. Now we're stopping at about 9 o'clock. We'll pause again as we enter towards the lunch hour here at noontime, looking at widespread showers, some thunderstorms embedded in there as well. But notice all of the yellows and oranges and reds indicating that heavy rainfall that we'll see. A lot of that along the I-35 region and south of I-90. So we'll see that rainfall continuing through the afternoon. At 4 o'clock here, now we'll start to enter into that evening commute. Notice off to the west, starting to see that rainfall kind of lightening up, dying down, but we'll still see through the River Valley counties continuing on with that rainfall through the evening hours. After about 8, 9 o'clock, really starting to see that rainfall tapering off. So by midnight, most of us should be done with the rain for the evening. There is a level 2 risk still in place for southern Minnesota, northern Iowa for tomorrow with our excessive rainfall outlook. And if you can recall our earlier flooding event that we saw earlier this month, we had the same thing, a level 2 risk for that excessive rainfall. Fingers crossed we don't quite see the same thing playing out. However, looking at model guidance in terms of rainfall amounts, much of the area here highlighted in purple could be looking at upwards of 2+ inches of rainfall and even a localized area where we could be looking at pockets upwards of 3+ inches. The Rochester area maybe up to about an inch and a quarter for total rainfall when all is done. As we look ahead to that 10-day forecast, we have that first alert day in place for tomorrow due to that risk for heavy rainfall and localized flash flooding. Things, though, looking to dry out just in time for the weekend. Temperatures pretty seasonal into the upper 70s to low 80s, maybe a couple more rain chances possible throughout next week.
Yeah, let's hope history doesn't repeat itself and a repeat of what we saw earlier this month.
Exactly.
Okay, Sarah, thank you. We'll be right back.
Let's take another look at that 7-day forecast for Austin, Mason City, and Winona. A pretty soggy day for your Friday. A first alert day in place due to the threat for heavy rainfall and localized flash flooding. Make sure to have multiple ways to receive alerts and warnings should we see some flood concerns in our area. And of course, use that extra caution if you're in more of a lower lying and flood prone area. The good news is conditions drying up by the weekend. Saturday and Sunday we'll be looking at highs anywhere from around 79 upwards of 82 for those afternoon high temperatures, staying dry into the first part of next week, with Monday's conditions looking very similar. We may have to watch a few other rain showers. A rain chance is possible throughout the middle of next week, looking more straight isolated in manner. No major events on the horizon outside of tomorrow. Keeping an eye, of course, on those stormy conditions. We'll be right back.
Alert weather.
Sponsored by Blue Ox Heating and Air.
Let's take one last look at that 10-day forecast as we have a first alert day in place tomorrow due to our heavy rain and potential for some localized flash flooding. Make sure you have multiple ways to receive alerts and warnings, especially if you're in lower lying and flood prone areas. The good news is we are looking to see some improvement here by the weekend, tracking that sunshine. Temperatures should be pretty seasonal there into the upper 70s to lower 80s. Maybe monitoring a couple more rain chances possible throughout the middle of next week, but predominantly looking at a dry forecast. We need the rain that's on the way for tomorrow. However, we don't need too much all at once. So hopefully we can find a nice balance there, but similar model trends from what we saw earlier this month with those flash flooding that happened. Really hoping that we don't see that situation play out tomorrow, but make sure that you are staying safe and you're prepared and you have that plan in place.
Speaking of being prepared, our morning team is going to be coming in here in a few hours to get ready. They will keep you posted on the weather conditions as that rain starts to move into southeast Minnesota and northeast Iowa. For Sarah, myself, all of us here at KTTC, thank you for being with us.